What up, y'all? We have another jam-packed weekend of tournaments going around, which means, and that's right, we have the data to look through over 1,400 players to report back to you all what are the best decks that you should be playing right now, as this meta is ever changing. Getting to know kind of like what's in and what's out, what feels really good is super important, especially for those of you who are still looking to climb that ranked ladder. What up, y'all? It's your boy Ben here, and we're going to do exactly that in just a moment. Alright, so before we do, we are literally less than 200 subscribers away, less than 25 subscribers from hitting 9,900 subscribers, and we're trying to hit that goal of 10,000 before the end of the first half of the year. Like, we can do this in June, y'all. So go ahead, if you liked the channel, if you like the videos and like all those things, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, click the notification bell button, share out the videos, do all those fun things, because like without the support of you all, none of this could happen. So like, let's continue building together, y'all. All right, with that out of the way, let's dive on in. Currently, we're going to be reviewing this Ursi Day Pocket Weekly. Looking at this, their day one is already done here and in the books. Just kind of seeing some of these decks that are coming out on top. We also have a completed Frog EX deck here that has been showing some really great promise with some decks that are in there as well. So we'll have to take a look at that too. So let's go ahead and get started with this first deck that we can see here is 8-0-0, leading the pack in the Ursi Day Pocket list. And so we'll open this up here, and as you can see, Crobat is making a splash with this rare candy. Now, on the channel, we played this with Kangaskhan in this slot instead of the Giratina, which was a very interesting way of like building this up, because what you can essentially do is you have your three main attackers here between Darkrai, Arceus, and Giratina EX. Crobat is a great finisher against those Oricorios, and with its ability Cunning Link to be able to deal that 30 damage, you are dealing a lot of passive damage without already attacking. If for some reason your board is able to be set up with Darkrai in the front or Arceus in the front, and you have like Crobat, Darkrai, that's 30, 60, 80 plus an attack if that's available to you, or you have Giratina with that available to you here. The leaf is in here to like kind of reset pieces here, because these are all 2 energies, and so that one leaf to reset what's in your active spot while you're building up in the back is huge. Guzma is a very interesting choice. I feel like we are still like, people like using their tools, people like using their giant capes especially, and so being able to get rid of 20 health with a trainer during that turn, and then you can finish things off with the Crobat or Darkrai, feels pretty good. In playing this style of deck, being able to again output damage from across the board in a single turn definitely pushes momentum in your way while you are like building up to these things, because again, you still need your rare candy, you still need your Arceus, like you still need to find your pieces. But in this kind of meta where like Darktina is still a thing, right? Like we still see flashes of these, or where people are still setting up, people still need to take time to get there. You have the time, and so this is one of the best decks that makes use of that time. And speaking of a Darkrai, Giratina, or Darktina for short, it's still very good. Y'all, like, I hate to say it, but it's still very good. And one of the trickier parts here is that it has been able to innovate with Oricorio. In the beginning, we were seeing these folks, like the Darktina players, were incorporating Oricorio in it itself, but then that kind of found to be less consistent. And like, what draws people to this deck, regardless of like play lines and how straightforward they are, and just kind of like, you know what the game plan is every single time that you play this, is that you know every single time what you're going to do to play this, because it's so consistent. You are playing out one of these two behemoths, you are powering up with either the dark energy or you're bellowing here, and then you are attacking once things are ready on turn 3 or turn 4 for Giratina. For Oricorios, you have the passive from Darkrai EX's ability to be able to deal 20 damage every time you attach Dark Energy, and really that's the only mon that you're attaching Dark Energy to, so Oricorios are losing that health, even though they're equipped with healing items themselves. Having to go through that, having to go through Rocky Helmet that gets attached to the Giratina, having to go through Pokemon Center Lady has been a choice here that Giratina and Darkrai players are able to use against those Oricorios, and unfortunately 70 HP, even 90 because of the giant cape, isn't enough to last through the onslaught that is this deck. Again, this deck remains still very much in this meta because of how consistent it still is, because you're only running 4 basic Pokemon. You're not looking to evolve. You don't need to worry about finding those other pieces because the pieces are right there, and then you just have your trainers to support. Up next though, we do have another Giratina, and if you haven't noticed, the last 3 decks have seen Giratina in them. Yeah, who knows? Who would have thought it, right? A card that was before we dive into this deck was really funny, because there was a lot of folks who were shouting out from the rooftops Giratina EX would be a bad card, but it's still really good. Being able to splash it into any kind of deck is really this key thing here, and really can save in a lot of decks to make it competitive, because 130 for free essentially, because you're generating that psychic energy, is really good and really splashable. And so speaking of being splashable, we also have another great mon that loves being able to use different colors as well, like Greninja or Snorlax here. Snorlax easily being a colorless Pokemon, so it doesn't matter which energy, but you have Greninja here with 1 water and 1 colorless energy, so that means you only need 1 water to pop up. In this deck though, you are running psychic and water energy because it's just that good, right? So you have the Pokemon Center Lady here. This is to make sure that Snorlax wakes up if you don't flip your coins, and so that's really preferred over the Irida here for that 10 HP. That's pretty good in terms of that. Greninja providing you enough of chip damage to either A, draw out the Cyrus, or B, attack for essentially 120 here or 150 once you have these two set up. And you definitely have Snorlax set up pretty early on, because all you need is 1 energy and then you're locked and ready to go, because you have Barry being able to attack as long as you have 2 energy attached to it. This deck here is really strong, especially into opposing Oricorio. Oricorio felt like this big bad monster, and I think you have to really still play around with that card in order for folks to feel like it, because there are certain decks that will feel like it's a wall, but in this deck, especially when you have Snorlax that can one-shot it, when you have Greninja that can also one-shot it, it really doesn't stand opposing threat. Being able to punish the back line, soften things up, feels really good into a lot of matchups. And up next, another Giratina finisher here, and this is just one of those ones, if you can't beat them, you join them. So we are seeing the splash of Oricorio in here. This deck is running a water and electric energy, and so essentially what you're looking to do here is have Oricorio as your wall. You're building up your Greninja here, since they're both Greninja just needs 1 water, Oricorio just needs 1 electric. You can use that so that way when the dual energies are coming, it's okay. Most likely of the times you're able to attack with either one of them. Shaman's here just to provide that extra healing. Things like going into Darktina players, this Shaman gives you an additional turn. So for example, your Darker play hits you with the passive, it'll take 2 energy triggers to deal 20 damage, because the Shaman's healing 10 per turn, right? And so that Shaman helps you survive a little bit more to allow you to find your pieces for Greninja, allows you to build up your Giratina EX there on the bench, because you do need its ability in order to get that psychic energy. Here, this deck is opting to use Irida as its healing option here, because all these mods will eventually have water on them, and so having that opportunity to heal for 80 or for 120 in a turn feels pretty strong. So now we're gonna look at the first place winner of the Frog EX by weekly. We have Fab here running the Arceus and Crobat, going 12, 1, and 1 to win it all. And so here's this deck as well too. This is running only grass energy. And so ideally what you are trying to do is that you have your Carnivine set up. You're really taking advantage of Crobat's ability because you have Arceus in play, and then Arceus is your finisher. Between Carnivine and Crobat, you can take care of opposing Choreo, so you don't have to worry about those EXs. So it just feels like decks that like still have strong non-EX Pokemon can still take you very far in this case. What's really nice here about this as well too is that Crobat has a free retreat, so like you're kind of safeguarded against any opposing Sabrinas as well. This deck is opting to use Guzma. Taking out things like poison is also pretty big for this deck. No poison barbs as well. That's starting to be seen a lot more as an addition, like as a third Rocky Helmet, so that way you can take away chip damage. But between all of these like basic Pokemons, you're really driving into your Crobat. Getting hit with that poison barb means that you're in it until you have to retreat, and if you have an Arceus EX up there, you don't want to be poisoned. So having Guzma in there seems pretty clutch in there as well. Still interesting to see red card being played in these top decks, but you know, it's there. 20 cards. Don't know how much it runs or how well it does, but as people are trying to find their pieces, maybe this helps them, maybe it doesn't, but who knows. But overall, this core right here is really strong. Being able to deal 50 damage for 1 energy, being able to deal 80 damage for 1 energy, and then sweeping up with your Arceus because your bench is filled is great. Up next, we have a Garchomp EX in Rampardos that is making waves here into the tournament rankings and really providing a lot of different choices that you can use with the deck, because when you rare candy into Garchomp EX, you're already attacking for 1 energy, and being able to pivot and attack anywhere for 50 damage is pretty strong. You also then can also go right into Rampardos, which also only needs 1 energy for that 130. It's a non-EX, so it's only worth 1 point. So even if it does go down, you're not too worried about that. And while that's attacking up front, you can continue the sustain with Lily, since it's a stage 2 mon, getting that 60 HP back while you're building up for that Dragon Claw from Garchomp EX. What's key to note here is that they're running the Gible Dragon line here, and I think that is a really smart case here because there are grass decks popping up, Decidueye, Meowscarada, you know, just so like you're avoiding weaknesses to your best of your ability in the early game, so you can have as much full health, or as much as full health as you can, and not losing to that weakness typing from there. So I think Gible is a great leave to have, especially when you see grass energy. That means you can just go ahead and jump right into Garchomp EX to then attack, regardless of you know that they'll have the typing advantage. At least that way you're not soaking in that extra damage when you're in your stage 1. And speaking of grass decks, this is one of the ones that we're talking about here. The Meowscarada Decidueye deck is really strong here, between having Meowscarada that is able to deal 130 to this heavy EX meta here. And while decks are running non-EXs to like take care of or Choreo, you're still running into a lot of EX Pokemon, and insert Meowscarada is able to deal that damage, and even just chipping them means that Decidueye EX here is able to attack from there. It's very interesting to see that this is choosing to use the Rowlet that does not have Skill Dive, opting to deal 20 instead of 10. Ideally, I think I would still opt for Skill Dive, because you're ideally attacking for 1, rare candy into Decidueye, and then attacking for the 100 damage anywhere that you so choose. So being able to pick where that's going, I feel like is more optimal. Whereas like this Rowlet, if you attack for 20, you get to attack for 100, but it's only to that 1 active spot, and your opponent might be trying to save something in the back. And with no Sabrinas here in this list, I think, or Cyrus's, I feel like you should still focus in on that like skill dive for that piece here. But again, Guzma being present in here, Leaf Capes being one of the types that get to run that, getting that plus 30. This is your why jumping up to a hefty 200 HP. You discarded jumping to 170. That is a lot of health to go through, especially with the sustain from Erica getting that 50 back. But why run grass when you're gonna run into Incineroar EX? Yo, we've seen Solo Zard, but now we're seeing Solo Kitty, and it's great. And one of the cool things about Solo Kitty here is that, and I mentioned Oricorio a lot, but there's just like a lot of ways to counter that card if your opponent can get there or is prepared for it. And the reason why I say that is because Incineroar EX can, and it may not deal that 30 damage with this move, but it can burn the Oricorio. So having that as your secondary option, obviously you have your Torracat, obviously you have your Litten. These are still you go in 30 into 40 to be able to attack there. But having Fire Fang, if you jump right into the rare candy, gets that burn. So if you get the 30 into the Fire Fang for 30 and then 50, you are knocking that Oricorio out. But yeah, Incineroar EX is a very, very strong Pokemon, having a strong 1 energy attack for 50 because you do 30 and then 20 automatically into having 143 energy attack. All above else is really, really big for it. And now with the Lily as well too, Dina knew what they were doing by releasing these Great Stage 2 mons with the sustain from Lily as well. Another deck that was interesting to see make waves here in that Frog EX deck tournament was this Crabominal Greninja Palkia EX deck. Crabominal is really great here because for 1 energy you are dealing 80 starting from your second turn of attacking and moving forward. So that first turn you deal 40 and then you deal 40 plus more every single conditional attack after that. It can get disrupted if your opponent hits you with a Sabrina, because then you have to rally that back up. But with the 160 HP, 180 with a giant cape, it's really good here. I think the focus is you build up Crabominal. Well, you get to your stage 1. That's 1 energy. You chip away with Greninja. That's no energy. And then you put the rest of the energy on Palkia so that we can get to that big 150 there. And with Greninja hitting those chips across, you're putting things into that 150 range, even through a cape, and dealing taking care of those high HP mons. And then last up is this Lycanroc Rampardos deck. Lycanroc acting like a pseudo Sprigatito, which can find any grass Pokemon. Rockruff here, excuse me, only specifically searches for Lycanroc. And Lycanroc, our Dusk or Night form, is great because if it has less health than the Pokemon that's in your opponent's active spot, which if it's like an EX or whatever the case may be, that it will then be able to deal 100 every single time. You then pair this up with Rampardos here, so that way you are getting yourself right into finding that Pokemon. What's interesting here is that there are only 6 Pokemon in this deck, so you can target cards specifically with your Pokemon communication. And I think those are one of those things where that's how like you'll find it ramp into your Rampardos. The rare candy is specifically for Rampardos, and by shortening down the amount of Pokemon that you have, the more reliable your Pokemon communication will be here. So I kind of like the inclusion of that and them opting out of taking Craniodose, so that way your Pokemon communication can hit more consistently. So yeah, y'all, this is the meta right now. Those are the decks that are doing highly well, and you can definitely be successful when piloting any of them. So let me know, what is your favorite deck from this list, and if you have some chefs out there and you're cooking up some other things that have been doing really well for you but hasn't really made a splash on a tournament scene yet, drop to your comments down below what is that deck, so that way I could be on the lookout for it and potentially be able to talk about it next week. Alright y'all, as always, hit that like, subscribe, and definitely click that notification bell button, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.